This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And here we are, Monday night. The Yankees have won 2 games in a row. This is the Start Spreading the News podcast, and I am Paul Semendinger with my good friend and partner, Dr. E.J. Fagan. Dr. E.J. Fagan, how are you today?
Doing wonderful. Summer is winding down, but the Yankees are maybe have hit rock bottom. I don't know. I've said that a couple of times in the last month, and I've been wrong. But it's doing pretty good, I think.
Yeah, so they've won 2 in a row. Close. You know, when they won yesterday, Sunday, this is live on Monday night, September the 5th. So when they won yesterday, September the 4th, they were on the verge of blowing it, and it looked like there was a ball 4. It was a low pitch, borderline. It's called strike 3, ball game over, the Yankees win. Today, they won a little bit more convincingly. I really didn't get a chance to see much of the game because we were at the beach and coming home as obviously the school year starts. I have my first college class tomorrow of the semester. Of course, the first year that I'm not serving as a principal after retiring after a glamorous and wonderful, thank you, 32-year career. So it's very strange because usually on Labor Day, at this time especially, but all weekend leading up to the big day tomorrow when the kids come back, it's full of excitement and anticipation and angst and worry and joy and every emotion you can possibly have. It's like a baseball player or any athlete on opening day. And when you're the principal, you know, it's you're like the manager. You've got to make sure your starting lineup is ready. You've got to make sure everybody knows their positions and everything's ready to hit the ground running. And it's been a strange dynamic for me these last couple of weeks and months, but especially these last couple of days here as we count down to tomorrow, because all of a sudden I feel some of those emotions like, oh, I got to make sure that, oh yeah, I don't, it's not my school anymore. So it's bizarre, but it's exciting. And, you know, I am looking forward to my class tomorrow at Ramapo College, but we're not here to talk about that, EJ. We're here to talk about the Yankees. So they've won 2 in a row. Tampa Bay, the Rays are 5 games back in the standings, 4 games in the loss column. The Toronto Blue Jays are 5.5 games back in the standings, 5 in the loss column. It's only the 5th day of September. Have the Yankees righted the ship? Can we draw any conclusion from these last 2 games? What do you think?
I mean, I wouldn't draw conclusions from 2 games. The Yankees on Sunday, really, that was a Aaron Judge game, right? Aaron Judge and the pitching staff, which has been the story for the last couple of weeks. Judge has been great. He's been hitting lots of home runs. We're going to talk about that today. The pitching staff's been pretty good. There's been some kind of, spots where, it feels like they're blowing it, but I think it just feels that way because the offense wasn't scoring any runs. And then they scored a whole 5 runs today. I mean, that's great. I mean, 5 runs is nice. It only took a lot from Aaron Judge, or some of that was from Aaron Judge, but it was from other players as well. And that's good. But I mean, it's a sign of the times that we're excited for 5 runs. This is a Yankee offense that would routinely blow teams out. Not that long ago, same players as we're putting out there today. So do I think the Yankees are pretty good? I think they're pretty good. I'm not convinced that their offense is elite again. You got to wait to see if some of the guys who are not healthy right now get healthy and start playing well. Giancarlo Stanton and Anthony Rizzo among them. They lost Andrew Benintendi, probably for the full season. He says he thinks he's coming back. I don't think he's coming back. He's getting wrist surgery, and it's September 5th. But that's a big blow, and the Yankees are really relying on Aaron Judge. And it helps that he's the best hitter that we've seen in baseball in a while. And so you can rely on someone that good to really push your team forward. Pitching staff looks good. I think the bullpen is kind of the most improved over the last couple of weeks. It's really feeling like a solid bullpen again. But no, I don't buy that the Yankee offense is ready to kind of get back to being a playoff team.
So on the Start Spreading the News blog, our wonderful website, every Tuesday at 10 a.m., we run a question called the Tuesday Discussion. And one of our writers, it's usually me, poses a question to all of the writers and just asks for their brief opinion, like a quick summary. What do you think about this? It leads to great discussions online, offline, in the comments. And my question for the writers that will see their answers tomorrow at 10 a.m. at startspreadingthenews.blog is, are you being at this point an optimist regarding the 2022 Yankees and their World Series chances, or a pessimist? I'm going to tell you I'm a pessimist still. I don't believe that these two games have really changed anything. I think you're right. I think if you look around the diamond, the Yankees players offensively are weak. Rizzo, is he going to come back? I don't know. He's obviously hurt with the back, and backs are tough. Even if he does come back, he's got great power numbers, but he's a 220 hitter. Gleyber Torres hasn't hit. DJ LeMahieu's got a toe problem. He hasn't hit. IFK at shortstop is a nice enough hitter. We're going to talk a little more about him later, but he has no power, though he homered today, and we'll talk about that. Josh Donaldson is a 220 hitter. What are you doing in left field? Tim LaCastro or Aaron Hicks?
Aaron Hicks.
I mean, right? These guys haven't really hit. The Yankees have Estevan Florial. He hasn't hit. I don't think they've given him a chance. We'll talk about him later. It's really a one-man offense for the most part. It's Aaron Judge. And can he continue to carry them? And I don't believe he can. And I don't believe that there's enough supporting actors around him. So I think it's nice they've won 2 in a row. It feels better. But I don't know if that guarantees us by any way, shape, or form that the Yankees are through this malaise and are ready to re-establish themselves as the dominant team in the American League. What do you think?
I'm a pessimist too, and people know from the show and from the podcast that I'm generally an optimist. I generally think that this is a good set of players, and in the end, they'll do good things. And I think the pitching staff is elite. I really do think the Yankees are going to go into the playoffs with maybe the best pitching staff in the American League, without really much doubt. I mean, now the bullpen is kind of starting to look good again, and guys like Loaiza and Holmes and Trevino are all really stepping up. Then we're fine there, right? Then the Yankees can pitch, but they might also go into the playoffs with the worst offense in the playoffs, and that's bad news. I just don't think that this team can put up enough runs to win enough games in the playoffs without something going right. And there's lots of things that could go right. There's a lot of chances at going right, and it doesn't all have to go right for them to have an average offense, which is really all they need with this pitching staff, having a good enough offense. But that means Giancarlo Stanton, who came back from the DL early, shouldn't have, and hasn't hit since he came back, and has looked positively useless out there. He's not looked like a good baseball player. That might mean Matt Carpenter, who you didn't mention, coming back, but he's not really working out yet. He had the broken foot that takes a long time to recover from. So we don't know about that. Maybe it means Andrew Benintendi making a quick rehab. One thing to note, it is September 5th, and it feels like it's September 5th, hasn't it? It feels like we only have 3 weeks left in the season. But, as we're going to talk about later in the show, the season actually bleeds into October quite a bit. And the first playoff series for the Yankees is 3 days after that, right? So the Yankees actually have until, have a good, 5 or 6 weeks to get Benintendi healthy. I'm still skeptical, but maybe that timeline works better for Carpenter and Harrison Bader, who's getting ready to go play some rehab games. So there's things that can happen. You mentioned Rizzo, right? Rizzo right now, I think they smartly just said, just have him home. He's not showing up to the ballpark, taking batting practice swings or doing whatever. Like, he's just hanging out, trying to get healthy, and backs are problematic, and Rizzo's not young. I think he'd be a big, if he can get back to being the player he's been this season, which has been a pretty good player, been a really strong power hitter, somebody who can, provide some insurance against behind Aaron Judge. I think that's all good. I think DJ LeMahieu, if he can get healthy, if Gleyber Torres can get healthy, if 2 or 3 of these guys end up being good offensive players, being the back of their baseball card, right? Not even just not going on a hot streak, but like just being their own normal selves. I think this can be a very good team, but it hasn't happened yet. And until it happens, I'm going to be skeptical that it will, because you got a lot of players who've been in very long slumps. There's a couple of guys who you mentioned who I don't think really have any chance of coming back. Josh Donaldson, I don't think there's any real world where Josh Donaldson is a 750 OPS hitter, let alone the player he's been in recent history. IKF, as you mentioned, I don't think there's any world where IKF is a valuable hitter in anything other than like a 9-hole slot, and that's assuming that his defense is better than I think it is. Trevino has looked a little more human lately, and I don't think I think the best case scenario for Trevino is good for a catcher, not good hitter.
And he's batting like fifth. They keep having to bat him up in like in a big time spot. I mean, as a number 8 hitter, you say, "Hey, he's great. He's doing terrific."
And that's the problem, right? Is that the Yankees have an offense that looks a lot like the offense that headed into the playoffs last year, and that's not a good thing. They're banged up like they were last year. Their pitching is much healthier than it was, which is the good news. This is a pitching staff that is much stronger, and I think it will be an asset going into the playoffs. But they're not that far off from, not having, playing a walking wounded Gio Urshela late last season, or calling up shortstops you've never heard of to play as your starting shortstop and number 6 hitter in the playoffs, etc. Right? They're not that far off of that. I'll tell you one real question mark for me is I'm looking at this offense right now, and I kind of wish they had signed Brett Gardner. Right, we talk about Brett Gardner a lot as the player who's kind of you're not so great a good player, but you never want to be your plan A. And with Benintendi hurt, I mean Brett Gardner is it would be an improvement on what they're playing out there in left field. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it can happen actually. But that's just one thought I had. Looking at this offense, it really could use Brett Gardner out there, 39-year-old Brett Gardner out there in left field.
Yeah. The Yankees decided that Brett Gardner wasn't the guy anymore. I'm not going to fault the Yankees for that. I will fault them for the fact that they seem to have this blind eye, and we were going to get to this in a little while, but why don't we just jump right into it? They seem to have this blind eye, this inability to properly support and promote their young talent. Let me lay out the case for you. I wrote a long piece yesterday for the site on this. But absent of Aaron Judge, and maybe then the next guy before that is Brett Gardner, and the next guy before that's Robinson Cano, the Yankees, they tout these prospects and they say these are the guys. And when people put up questions and go, we've been hearing this for decades now, they go, yeah, I know. Jose Tabata, we were just, that he wasn't the guy. Jesus Montero, he wasn't the guy. But this time we've got it. This time we've got Clint Frazier. We've got Miguel Andujar. We've got the guys. Blake Rutherford. These are the guys. I know the other guys weren't the guys, but this time it's the guys. We just signed all these international free agents. We just broke the market. We've got the guy. And then those guys don't pan out. We've got Gleyber Torres. And then he doesn't pan out. And my concern is that except for Aaron Judge, the Yankees don't really have a great history of bringing up guys who then become very successful for a long period, or many of them even for a short period. And I think when you look at the way they handle these guys, you can see what the problem is. And I've been complaining about Estevan Florial and the way the Yankees haven't given him a chance. And the argument has been back to me, which I understand. Well, he can't hit. The Yankees don't believe he can hit. Okay, fair enough. If the alternative was somebody like Andrew Benintendi, and a guy who's hitting 300, hasn't hit great for the Yankees, but he's a solid Major League Baseball player, and he's had a solid year, and he's a very good baseball player, and he's had a very good year, then you go, yeah, I don't think you should play Florial. But when the choice is Marwin Gonzalez, or the choice is Aaron Hicks, or the choice is Tim LeCastro, why wouldn't you try the 24-year-old kid with some upside, and at least maybe he could get a hit? He can't do worse. So he comes up, he goes down, he comes up, he goes down, he comes up. They never play him. Fair enough. The Yankees don't have faith in him. But then you look at Oswaldo Cabrera. He's an infielder. The Yankees have all of a sudden made him an outfielder. Okay. Not exactly putting somebody who's a brand new major leaguer in a position where he can succeed. He's succeeding as a defensive player, and he's had some good offensive games, but you sort of want somebody to be in a position where they're comfortable when you bring them up. You don't want to just be throwing them to the wolves. Seems like they threw him to the wolves. And then just a few days ago, they finally bring up Oswald Peraza. Here's their stud shortstop. This is the guy. This is one of the two guys. It's Peraza and Volpe. Like, these are the guys. The Yankees for the next decade are going to be around these two guys. They are the best of the brightest, the brightest of the greatest, and all that. And so he comes up, and instead of putting him in the lineup, they put him on the bench. I was outraged that they gave him his first major league at bat in the bottom of the ninth, or the top of the ninth, I forget. I guess it was on the road. It was top of the ninth. In a game they'd already punted on. They were down by 600 runs. They had just used Marwin Gonzalez as a pitcher. There's 2 outs in the ninth inning. Oh, by the way, get your first major league at bat. 1, 2, 3 pitches, strikeout, done. I mean, I don't see other teams treating their young stars like this. So the next day he starts at short. That's where he belongs. That's great. That's what he should be doing. Then the next day he plays second base. Then the next day he's on the bench. How do you build a young player if you don't give him a chance? And so I get the Florial argument. Fine, I'll lose that one. But they're doing the same thing to Peraza. So what's the problem? Why can't the Yankees seem to figure it out with their young players?
Well, let me first off, I think you're underselling a little bit of the young players coming up, mostly because of the pitching side, right? They brought up a lot of young pitchers. Jordan Montgomery being the big example, but Nestor Cortez, Domingo Herman, lots of guys in the bullpen. They have a pretty solid pipeline to young players, but you're completely right about the hitting side. So
right,
the only other players I can name, the only other player I can name that is Gary Sanchez, as a player who kind of came up as a top prospect, and they kept him around on the team. Now, a lot of players they trade away, and they trade away a lot of players who, there's not really a lot of position players that you really miss. Especially guys who are kind of near to the majors. There's a guy, for example, named Ezekiel Duran, who went to Texas, who is now kind of a top prospect, and you miss, but he was in low A or whatever when they traded for him. I think the problem is that the Yankees have this very kind of win-only mentality, and they just don't want to put a young player out there when there are games on the line. And they trust the old veteran. Now the problem is a lot of times those veterans aren't very good. Forget shortstop. I mean, I think Oswald Peraza would probably be a better DH right now than Giancarlo Stanton. Probably same for Esteban Florial. But the Yankees trust their old veterans, and that's a problem that they've had. I think other than maybe Florial, who you can make an argument for, and maybe Andujar, who I don't think is very good, but some people do. I don't think there's a player that's kind of languished at AAA to the point that they've kind of just lost their development. There's been a lot of guys who they haven't promoted and then didn't really have success in other places. So, for example, Mike Ford is bouncing around teams this year, and he hasn't been very good. But I am with you. I don't understand why it took them, a month and a half late to call up Peraza and Cabrera. They were players who were playing very, very well at AAA. There's no other levels to promote them to. And the competition shouldn't have been that hard. Gleyber Torres has been awful for a very long time now. IKF has been awful, and we didn't really have high expectations for him. Torres, you could say, hey, maybe you can get him back to the form he showed early in the season, and then therefore you would have a really big advantage there. The best case scenario for IKF is just Oswald Peraza, and that's what I think frustrates frustrates me, frustrates a lot of people. I think it was either Brian Cashman or Aaron Boone made a comment about why they hadn't yet brought up Peraza about 2 weeks ago. And they says, hey, we don't have a spot for him. We're not going to call him up if we don't think we can give him everyday playing time. Now, look, it's September now, so I'm not going to hold him to that now, right? You can have expanded rosters, and I don't know who else on the hitting side they would call up other than those two guys who they called up. But the point is that, no, the argument that the frustration from fans was not that, you would call him up and wouldn't sit him on the bench. It was that IKF is playing over him. We shouldn't.
Right. So I'm
really clear that he shouldn't. And you're not. And here's the thing: 3 weeks from now, we might conclude that Oswald Peraza is not ready for the majors. But he needs 3 weeks. Right? He needs time to get up, get comfortable, adjust, and play well. Cabrera, I think you're right. Is in a situation where they just ran out of outfielders, and so they're like, well, go for it, kid. Right? Give it a try, and we'll evaluate what the heck's going on in spring training next year with him. And so I can't really blame them for that, just because other than maybe Florial, I don't think there's a lot of other options. Let's talk about Florial. I think there's a good argument. I've seen a lot of people kind of on baseball Twitter who are not in the Yankee world basically say like Florial's got a swing that's going to get destroyed in the major leagues, and maybe that's the case. He was a former top prospect, but he's got this high strikeout rate. He's very athletic, but he's one of those guys who plays a little bit below his defense for how fast he is. And I understand that argument, but if that's the case, he shouldn't be on the 40-man roster. Right, you could put Volpe in his spot and call up Anthony Volpe. Right, Anthony Volpe just had a big day today, AAA. Lots of clutch hitting, lots of stolen bases, really good player, and use him in that spot. But you don't. Instead, he's sitting on the bench and not doing anything. Tim LeCastro is sitting on the bench and not doing anything. We can go down the list of players here. Marwin Gonzalez is your third string first baseman. That's not really a role on a major league playoff bound team. I think they should have. These are guys that they've held on to when they could have used those spots for players who conceivably could be pretty good.
Right.
And I can't explain it. Like I don't. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it just seems like bad roster management.
Right. It just seems like they don't have a real plan, and they make it up each day as they go along. So I understand the idea that you need Aaron Judge in the lineup. Of course you do, because he's having a great season. But the Yankees' approach with Aaron Judge has been this thing about load management. Well, we have to take care of him. We don't want to overdo it. He needs to be coddled a little bit. And they've done that with Stanton. They've done that with a lot of their players. Okay, fair enough, if that's the philosophy. And now they're running him out in center field all the time. Well, you don't have to put him in center field if you put Florial in center field. He's a center fielder. Now, again, he may not hit. He might not ever be a major league hitter, but they're not playing him because Mickey Mantle's out there. They're not playing him because Bernie Williams or even Roberto Kelly is out there, guys who could hit. They're not playing him so Aaron Hicks can play. And to me, that just makes no sense. Even Tim LeCastro, he hasn't hit over 200 in 2 years. He's 30 years old. We know what Tim LeCastro is. He's a nice player. He's a fill-in guy. He's a good fifth outfielder. He can run, he can field, but he's not the future. Florial might be.
Why have him on the roster if you're not going to play him? Right? Well, he hasn't started a game.
He started today.
The Yankees he started today. Okay,
LeCastro.
Yeah. I mean, like they got a lot of guys who they're just kind of hanging on to for depth reasons, and even when all the guys get injured, they don't find the need to use them.
Right.
Now, so look, as I mentioned from time to time on the show, I'm a social scientist, and when you're working with statistics, one thing you have to understand is uncertainty, and I really do feel like the Yankees need to learn how to embrace uncertainty a little bit. They might think that Esteban Florial, despite having really good AAA numbers, is not a major league hitter. And that might be the case. In fact, for most prospects, it is the case that they will struggle to become full-time, effective, above replacement level major league players. But you just don't know, right? There is no way to know the answer to that question. Is Esteban Florial a major league hitter without putting him out there for an extended period of time to face major league hitters? And this is the opportunity to do it, because it's not like Oswaldo Cabrera is hitting. Right, if Oswaldo Cabrera was playing, I think a solid right field for somebody who's never played it before, and hitting, I would be like, sure, let's do it. But he's not. He's hitting like 200, right? He's not.
But I'd even play him, right? Like, he's the young kid. He could be the future. Let's let him get a couple of weeks and see what happens.
Sure, I mean, you put him in right, and then you put Florial in left, right? I'm fine.
Or put Cabrera in left. I mean, he wasn't a right fielder anyway. Put Judge where he belongs. Worry about the load management. Keep him in right field. Put Florial in center field, and let's see what happens for 2
and
weeks.
then just wait for Harrison Bader, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no. Look, I'm with you there. I think there is some unfortunate timing here, right? That you had Matt Carpenter get hurt right after the trade deadline. You have Andrew Benintendi get knocked out with a freak wrist injury. He's not a guy who I think anyone really expected to go down with an injury after the trade. So there's some bad timing there, and you got to forgive them for that. But again, like if they're not willing to do this, to give these players a chance, they shouldn't be on the roster. Oswald Peraza, there's a good chance. Embrace the uncertainty, right? There's some probability that he's actually not just like better than IKF, but much better. Like it's really good. Like Oswald Peraza is a top prospect. He is the best defensive infielder in the Yankee system. He can run. He is better he has better talent than IKF. Maybe that talent's not there right now. Maybe it is there right now. But there's no way to know that until you give him almost everyday playing time for 3 weeks.
100%. We're
And,
saying the same thing. 100%.
and until they're willing to do that, like I'm not confident that they can turn Anthony Volpe into a full time major league player. Like, do you think that they're willing to say at spring training next year, Volpe, you've earned a spot. You are now our everyday player, and even if you struggle for 2 months, we're going to keep you in the majors. No,
Mm-mm.
that's just not the team that they are. The thing about pitching is that you can hide a pitcher, or sometimes you just need a pitcher. Domingo Herman's a great example. I don't think they were planning on Domingo Herman being a starter and being a really important part of their rotation at the moment. But guys got injured and guys had to be rested, and so like you need 5 starters, and so you have room out there, and it's just easier not to do that with a hitter. It's easier to be like, well, we got a shortstop, right? Like he may not be very good, but he's there. What are we gonna do? Put him on the bench?
Yes.
And, yes, I agree with you, but it's easier to say that, right? As opposed to, oh crap, we need another pitcher, and who's going to do it? And or I'll just put Herman in there, and then all of a sudden you get some information, and now Herman is looking like a trade chip in the offseason, or he's looking like a really interesting 6 starter next year, a guy who maybe you want to use in the bullpen in the playoffs, maybe even give some starts in the playoffs. Like he's looking really good. And to me, that is what good teams do. Good organizations that consistently win, give players chances, and then if it doesn't work, they go to Plan B. And the Yankees they're both less willing to give players chances. Like the last player that they committed to early in the season and as a hitter and said, "Okay, you're on this team," is probably Gleyber Torres. Even you think about Clint Frazier. Clint Frazier had some struggles, and they said, "Well, you're in AAA. Goodbye." Right? They did not give him much leash, and maybe he didn't deserve it. He had all sorts of other issues that are going on the field personally. He had concussion issues. His defense wasn't great. But there's a lot of teams who would see that and say, okay, like we're going to push you through this, even if it means we lose some games. Part of the problem, I think, is that there's a lot of pressure on the Yankees to win now. Whatever. You to not ever kind of skip a beat and try to win every single season. That's not good pressure. But again, it's not like the Yankees are. I'm trying to think of a good example of. It's not like Nick Swisher, like an aging Nick Swisher is out there in the outfield being just okay, and you want to kind of displace him to test out a new player. That's not the situation. The situation is you've run out of bodies, and you're still not willing to give the young guys playing time.
Which is infuriating. And IKF homered. We were on the Garden State Parkway driving home, listening to the game. And I hear Sterling go into the home run call for IKF. And part of me was excited. Good for him. I mean, I root for these guys. You want them to do well.
He's a good guy. He's not a
Right.
bad person.
But then I'm going, no, he hit a home run. That's the worst thing he could have possibly done because now he'll get another 5 days of playing time and Peraza is going to sit the bench. Oh, you know what? His swing's coming around. He's starting to hit the ball. He's homered twice in the second half of the year. He's on pace to have 3 home runs. He might even double that next year and get 4 home runs. We'll never see Peraza. Oy vey. All right.
Yeah,
so
it reminds me of the Donaldson Grand Slam a few weeks ago, right? Donaldson was on the ropes, and he hit the biggest hit of the season, right? I mean, he hit the mythical down by 3 runs Grand Slam to walk it off. That doesn't happen a lot, and that bought him a lot of time. And you're right. I mean, the classic example of this was Rick Odor last year. Rick Odor was terrible last year, unless it was the 9th inning and the Yankees were down, and then he was great, and it was weird, and that kept him on the team much longer than he should have been on the team. I definitely have that same feeling with IKF. He had a couple of weeks ago, he had that game where he had like 3 hits and 2 of them were big clutch hits. And one of them was like a fun little bunt play. And that kept him on the team even longer. And you're right that the timing there is bad. You like to think that he's getting pushed a little bit by competition, but he just doesn't have that much talent. I mean, I'm just looking at his splits right now. If we just take, since August 1st, right? So, if it feels like IKF is going really well, how's he been doing since August 1st? He's saying 235 with a 305 on base percentage and 306 slugging. right? There's not, it's not like he's a guy who's heating up. He had a good game. And I think, guys like Marwin Gonzalez who are on the bench occasionally hit home runs. And I want IKF to be my guy to hit a bunt in a key spot or whatever, or come in as a defensive replacement or something like that. But I don't want him to be the number 6 hitter.
Which he's been. So we're going to take a break real quickly. I'm going to pull our pictures down, you and me, and then I'm going to pull a different picture up right now. Are you ready for this? That's right. That's me and the legendary Roy White, one of the great Yankees of all time. And those of you who don't know, I have worked closely with Roy White all of this year to pen his autobiography, which will be coming out next April, From Compton to the Bronx by Roy White with Paul Semendinger. And I think this book is going to be a smash hit. The people who have been proofing it have told me what a phenomenal book it is. And I'm excited about, going through the rest of the publishing process. But I'm also here to tell you about a great event on November 17th that's going to benefit the Roy White Foundation. We are going to be having an event at 6:30 p.m. at Ramapo College. And the event is going to be called An Evening with Roy White. Roy is going to tell the audience about growing up in Compton, facing segregation in the early parts of his career when he was playing minor league baseball in the South. He's going to talk about what it's like to be a winner. He played with Mickey Mantle and Reggie Jackson and Thurman Munson, went to Japan and played with Sadahara O, won the Japanese World Series, the Japan Series, and won 2 World Series with the Yankees. A legendary Yankee. He's going to talk about being successful, being athletic. What are the components of being a Major League Baseball player? It should be a phenomenal evening. Everybody in attendance is going to get a free Roy White 8x10 autograph. And the Roy White Foundation offers scholarships to students for their first year of college, paying for all their expenses, their books and things like that, up to $750. One college student in that audience will win one of those scholarships. So put it on your calendar now. Thursday night, November 17th, Ramapo College, the Trustees Pavilion, 6:30 p.m. You can find out more information on that event by going to startspreadingthenews.blog. Let's bring EJ back. Hey, EJ, I know you're in Chicago and I know you have classes, but it'd be nice if you canceled your classes for a few days and flew back home and came to see the great Roy White event.
That would be wonderful. I wish I could. I can't wait to read the book, though.
Well, you might even get a preview copy once we get to that point. We're getting closer and closer. I think it's going to be great. Roy White's a fascinating guy and one of the nicest people ever. Just a gentleman. And I've told this story many times. Roy White didn't know me from anybody. I approached him through Mac of the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Mac reached out to Roy White for me. They'd been talking and set up an opportunity for he and I to talk, for me to give him the pitch that I'd love to write his autobiography the way he wants his story told. And we talked, we had a couple of conversations, and we put this thing together and well, we didn't put the whole thing together at that point, but we put the idea of writing together. And then we've met over 6, 8, 10 months now to get this thing going and to write this beautiful book. And, Roy White, this guy I've talked to former teammates, Willie Randolph, Chris Chambliss, Ian Dixon, John Sippen, who played with him in Japan. I've talked to Yankee executives, including Ray Negron. And every single person I've talked to talks about what a classy man he is, but as he was as a player, when I use the word was, what a great gentleman, what a compassionate human being. And I saw that personally when Father's Day came, and all of a sudden I got a text on my phone, and it came from Roy White and said, "Hey, Paul, happy Father's Day." Now, Roy White's talking with all sorts of people that are much more important in this world than me. And he took the time to wish me a happy Father's Day. And I thought that just spoke volumes about what a great human being he is. So should be great. Thank you, EJ. And it'll be the 17th at Ramapo College. The book comes out in April. Obviously, we'll be talking lots more about that. Hey, let's talk about Aaron Judge for a moment. So, I mean, he's just hitting home runs all the time now. 54, I believe, after today. I think only two people in Yankees history have ever hit more than 54 home runs in a season. Those two guys are Babe Ruth and Roger Maris. EJ, we don't do betting on the Start Spreading the News site. Anytime those companies ask me to advertise, I don't. I'm not a big fan of betting, and I think it's going to have detrimental effects on the sport. So we're trying to stay out of that whole realm. But if you are a betting man, betting just for the sake of saying yes or no, with no money or anything else involved, is Aaron Judge going to catch Roger Maris, break Roger Maris's number, or is he going to fall short? What do you think?
Yeah, I think at this point you got to bet on him doing it. He's got 27 games remaining. He's at 54. He's hot right now. I wonder if at some point, the Yankees have had a problem with protecting Aaron Judge. That they don't have anybody behind him, and so he's been seeing a lot of balls. And that was really the story in August with him. Even with that, he still hit a lot of home runs. But it was a problem. I wonder if, as this becomes closer to 60, if non-contending teams at least just pitch to him, right? They say, hey, look, I'm not going to walk the guy chasing Babe Ruth. I'm going to try to get him out, but I'm not going to pitch around him. A lot of players, including Maris, had really hot Septembers when they were chasing the number. Giancarlo Stanton, when he had his biggest home run season ever, hit like 25 in September. Something crazy like that. The season again goes to October 4th. Aaron Judge only needs 7 more home runs to break Roger Maris's record. He would have to have his worst month of the season for him not to do it. I think there's a chance he can get 65, 66. I mean, can really blow past that record, and we can really start kind of talking about his season's place in the all-time record books, given some of the history, with everybody who hit more than 70.
All right, so I've been reading reports and hearing things. Just a quick back step here. I don't really read the other blogs. Every now and again, I check them out. I don't really read a lot of the other writers, like even the mainstream guys in the newspapers or whatever. I only listen to talk radio, sports radio in passing. And I do that consciously because on the Yankee site that we have, Start Spreading the News, and on this podcast and everywhere else, I want the opinions that I espouse to be mine, right? Of course, I follow the team and I want to listen and follow what's happening, but the opinion stuff, I don't want to be sitting here and restating somebody else's opinion. I want to look at the data, look at the evidence, and come up with my own. And you do the same. But I have heard, in passing, you see headlines and things like that the real record is Roger Maris's because, steroids and Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds and all this. And so that's not the record anymore. The record is Maris's. Where do you stand on that?
I hate the question, right? I mean, there's a lot of asterisks on any record in baseball. What's the most impressive season of all time? Right. There's lots of answers to that. One could be Bonds' 2003 season, whatever that season was that he had those incredible stats. It could be something when you go back in time and you look at the context of that season, you realize that this player stood out more than any other player in baseball. I'm comfortable saying, those three guys hit a lot of home runs in a very home run friendly environment. Aaron Judge is going to hit more home runs, probably 20 home runs more than the number 2 guy. And I think we might come back and say that this is the most impressive home run season in our lifetimes. And I think that is a very something we can say. Now, whether or not does he have the record, I don't really care. Right, a lot of the pitchers who were throwing balls to those guys were also on steroids, and it was something that was tacitly allowed by baseball. It wasn't policed. In fact, in the McGwire Sosa days, was very much was tacitly encouraged by baseball management. So I don't hold that against those guys, and that's just why we just have to understand the context and history when we think about baseball stats. You can even go back to Babe Ruth, who allegedly like ate goat parts in order to like enhance his masculinity or something like that, right? Like that the people have been trying to enhance their performance with chemicals throughout all of baseball. You can go look at Hank Aaron and that generation of players, and they were all taking amphetamines before the game, which is one reason why the old guys were able to still play pretty well deep into their careers. Aaron Judge doesn't have a lot of that stuff, but he also has, different coaching technology. He has he has different equipment. He's got different ballparks that he plays in. All of that stuff is context. And I just know that we're watching an incredible season, a season that I'm going to remember for a long time. And Aaron Judge is the best hitter in baseball, and it's not even close. And that's all that matters to me.
I tend to agree with you. I get tired, or I don't really appreciate revisionist history, right? They did it with steroids, okay, but they did it.
And theirs did it in 162 games, right?
Right, right, and yeah, Matt and Babe Ruth did it in 154, right? But that was the season then.
Yeah, and Babe Ruth had the shorter porch that they built for him, right? We can keep doing this.
Correct, and Aaron Judge has a smaller stadium. It's easier to hit him out in right field nowadays than it was in that power alley. I think the Yankee Stadium used to be a net negative home run place, and now it's a net positive home run place. And Death Valley is nowhere near what it was when Joe DiMaggio played, and before the stadium was renovated in 1976. That's the old stadium, and then the new one I think is, similar, but it's much easier to pull a ball in left field out in center field out of Yankee Stadium it is now than it was back in those days. So you take it what it was. So Barry Bonds was on steroids, maybe not. I don't know. I'm not willing to say yes or no. I'm saying this is what the people say, right? But that's what he did at that time. They let him play. He played the games. He hit 73 home runs, whatever he hit, and that's the record. Like, we can't go back and say that record counts or that record doesn't count because we decided this, that, or the other thing. It just gets. Did the Astros cheat? But supposedly they cheated. Were they the only team cheating? I don't know that they were the only team cheating. What was the extent of their cheating? I don't know, but they won the World Series, and nobody's taken that away from them. It happened. That's what happened. And so that becomes the story of baseball. So if Aaron Judge hits 62 home runs or more, he's going to be the all-time Yankee home run champion, maybe the all-time American League home run champion. But at this point, I think he's got to beat Barry Bonds to hit the National League or the Major League record or whatever. But yeah, I just think we get focused on things sometimes that are just distracting. So
and look, he has the advantage that Roger Maris was a Yankee. And so regardless of what he's competing against, he's competing for a record. He's competing for the Yankee record. And if he had 62 home runs, he has more home runs than any other Yankees had in the season. And again, there's all sorts of context we can bring into that. But to me, that's something to celebrate. And there's going to be a celebration if he does. I don't know if it's going to be at 60. It's going to be at 61 or at 62. Maybe at 70. That would be one heck of a month. But there will be some sort of big celebration if it happens. And I think that will be real and feel good. And I don't think it will feel like they're celebrating something that's not real. I think it's
real.
Baseball will pay attention. Baseball will pay attention to it. And after Judge hits like another 2 or 3 home runs, every single game, the national media is going to watch every single Aaron Judge at bat for, his chase to 60 and 61 and 62, etc.
And that's where the pressure really, really mounts. And,
and Judge can handle that pressure, right? Like Judge has the mindset that I'm not even a little bit concerned. And he has the mindset to not sign a $220 million contract before the season. And, he's going to he made a good decision there. And it's going to be, I like to see a player rewarded for taking risks like that. And he's going to be rewarded by somebody.
Now, listen, we got some interesting perspectives here. Mike Whiteman has put up a couple of comments. Let me put them up here for you. He says he thinks it's harder to hit now than in 1961 and follows that up with expansion, mediocre relief pitching, and Mantle protecting Maris in the order made it easier for Roger Maris to hit home runs than obviously for Aaron Judge. So that's sort of going a little bit differently than what we were just talking about. I'm not going to disagree with Mike Whiteman on that. I think all those things are absolutely true. The relief pitching today is better. Um, there are more teams than there were in 1961, and 1961 was an expansion year, so the level of play in that first year obviously wasn't the level of play it is now. I think the players today probably the pitchers are much more well-rounded. There's more pitchers you're facing. They're throwing harder. It's harder to hit it off them. I think that's one reason why people can't beat the shift. So I think
So,
all that's true.
so
And
I did a study of this a couple of years ago.
oh,
I
good.
wrote an
Let's hear
article
it.
for Baseball Prospectus,
Mm-hmm.
and the question was is when you take kind of top level offensive stats and you adjust them for variance, that is how much variance there was in the league that year. You can kind of capture how different quality of competition was. The idea being variance means is basically how compressed or expanded are the sets of values in a given year. So if you think about something like WOBA, the basic offensive statistic, in a year with high variance, you're going to have a lot of people with really really big WOBAs and a lot of people with really really small WOBAs. And as variance decreases, it becomes harder to stand out, which means that essentially that the quality of competition is getting greater and the actual values of between the difference between the best and the worst players is getting compressed. And so what I did was I just said, okay, let me just look at the variance in one of Baseball Prospectus's top level offensive stats over the years. And what I found was that as I mean, I wish I could share my screen right now with these numbers, but I'm going to avoid that for a second. So what you can what you have right here, in fact, here, let me share this screen so we actually have the chart here. So I
Are
can
you
do a
able to
little.
share?
Let's see if I can share my screen. I think I can. Can you see that?
No.
All right. I think you might have to move it on to. Sorry for the technical difficulties, people. This is live. You might have to move it onto the screen. But while Paul's trying to figure that out, so here's what I did. I said, okay, what periods of baseball? Here's
Look at that. EJ, we got it.
yeah, there we go. Right. So what periods of baseball was it? Did we find that um, that variance was lowest? That meaning that the quality of competition was greatest, which means that a really impressive season during these periods of low variance is even more impressive. And you can see that you have right here, you have the early to mid 1980s as a high variance period. And then you see something interesting happen in the 90s and early 2000s. This is when Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds are hitting everything. You see it go up. And what's going on there? I think it's steroids. Right? I think what happened right there is that some players were able to stand out more from the crowd because they were drugged up and they were able to play really well. And you see, as soon as steroids exit the game, this huge drop in the variance, which means the quality of competition goes up. This is the era, by the way, when Mike Trout is just absolutely killing it. And then when I measured this in 2019, it was like the second or third lowest variance season of all time. And I said that was really impressive. So if we take a look right here, these are just by this statistic, which is basically the same as like an OPS plus kind of thing. You can see the headline best seasons of all time: Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, Stan Musial, and a lot of these are during these high variance periods of time when it was really easy to be Babe Ruth and out homer the league by 40 home runs. For that was, I don't think necessarily drugs. That was quality competition. He wasn't playing against minor league players and all sorts of other players he could be competing against. Now, if we take a look at this same the same figure and we just adjust it for variance, we get the best seasons of all time, and some other seasons come out. You have Bryce Harper's 2015 season, Mike Trout's 2018 season, both really really strong seasons that were some of the best of all time. 1980s George Brett season. Those Barry Bonds seasons are still up there. Pedro Guerrero has a crazy season. I don't know how that really happened. But it was during a period of low variance. You can kind of go down the list here, and you see some more players really stick out as having truly incredible seasons, and it's mostly during that 80s period and those 2010s periods where you had really strong play. So if we just go back to this chart right here, and we look at Maris and Mantle are in a high variance part of the game. Now, I think this is 1961, right around here. So it's not right before this spike. when you had just you had all sorts of things going on that kind of made some players not stand out, but still it's much higher than the present day. And so what I think that means, and I can stop talking right now, but what I think that means is that this Aaron Judge season is more impressive than either the Bonds, McGuire, and Sosa seasons or the Maris season.
Fascinating stuff. And more impressive, EJ, is the fact that we were able to put that up there.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, we have taken the Start Spreading the News podcast to a whole nother level now that we are able to
PowerPoint
share
slides
screens
next week.
and what's that? It's like this is almost as good as Hollywood production at this point. So, and that was great. That's great stuff there, EJ. And I love that
was
you're
a fun
able to
article.
share it.
It was a fun article. I haven't done the same for pitching yet, but it's one thing that's kind of on my list to do one of these days because you have a lot of really big pitching seasons, and you can think back to eras, and you have eras when you had individual pitchers, probably guys who were cheating, who were incredible, just so much better than their competition. Guys like Don Drysdale, Whitey Ford, etc. And they were able to be so elite, and they went down for Hall of Fame careers. And I bet you that there's essentially, there's an explanation for that.
I'm going to try something right now. Uh-oh. What did I do?
There we go.
Oh, yeah. Good. I'm sharing a
screen. We're learning new skills here today.
As we do this, real quickly, my dear friends, let's just pull this down here. Monday, Mahwah, New Jersey. I will be at the Mahwah Library at 7 p.m. talking about, now we'll pull this down, this wonderful Yankees book, The Least Among Them, which just won a couple more awards, a gold award and a silver award. That's now 4 different recognitions for this wonderful book. 2 gold awards, a silver award, and also mentioned in National Review magazine as one of the best books of 2021. Anyway, I'll be at the Mahwah, New Jersey Library this Monday night at 7 p.m. Come join me. We're going to talk about the Yankees. We're going to talk about that wonderful book, and we can continue any of the things that EJ and I are talking about on the blog right now or on our podcast. So let's get EJ back up here. We'll get the screen together. There we are. Nice and big size. EJ, we're coming up towards the top of the hour, and this always seems to happen. There's so many things I want to talk about. Let's do a little teaser here. Aaron Boone. He was hired to bring the Yankees to the next level. It's been a number of years. He hasn't gotten the Yankees to the World Series. We're both pessimistic about him making it to the World Series again this year. One of the things that Aaron Boone did not have when the Yankees brought him in was experience. I was advocating for Buck Showalter a long time ago. Some people tell me that was crazy. Buck's not a great manager, yada, yada, yada. Okay, fair enough. But Buck has a little gravitas, as they used to always say about certain politicians in the news. Like, he brings a different feeling to a team than than Aaron Boone does, because Aaron Boone didn't have any experience. There's a great manager out there who's a World Series championship manager who has that kind of level of respect. His name is Joe Maddon. Should the Yankees consider, if they fail to reach the World Series, bringing in Joe Maddon as early as next year? What do you think?
So I don't think so for next year. And I think next year, if they decide to go for another manager, I think they can and should hire essentially a new age manager. Joe Maddon has been fired a bunch recently. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He's old. He's the smartest guy from 20 years ago or 15 years ago, which means he's not top 10 in baseball today. I think we should talk about this month, though. Right? If you think that the problem with this team is that they're listless, they psychologically they are not using their talent, that they need an ass kicking. In hockey, you see much more common to fire the head coach in hockey than it is to fire the manager in baseball mid-season. And there's a cycle in baseball, in hockey, between player coaches and coaches players hate. Player coaches, sometimes they're there and everybody's getting along and they're nice to everybody, and and they win games, and eventually they become kind of lazy and don't really execute a game plan well, and they start making little mistakes, and you bring in a guy to yell at them. And that guy lasts for 2 years, and then he wears out his welcome, and they bring in a player's coach. That cycle repeats again and again and again in hockey. It's very common. And I think the Yankees need a guy who's not a player's coach right now. And Aaron Boone is a player's coach. Right? He is the nice guy. He is the guy that players like, that keeps everybody on an even keel. But they don't need to be on an even keel right now. Right? They need someone who's not going to accept bad play, mistakes, not winning. And I think there's no other thing you can do right now other than firing Aaron Boone if you think the problem is psychology. If you think the problem is injuries or players getting old or whatever, like that's a different question. But if you think that this is a talented team, I think this is a talented team that's just playing well below its ability. I think you can fire him and bring somebody else in. Could that be Joe Madden? Sure. He's also kind of a player's coach. He's kind of a weirdo coach in a lot of ways. But there's other guys out there. There's another World Series out there named Joe Girardi, who's looking for a job, who you could promise a job to for a couple of months. There's some other crazy ideas out there. We discussed these on the Bronx Beat podcast yesterday. Derek Jeter's looking for a job, and if you want someone to coach your team for a month, who will bring a winning atmosphere and kind of let the rest of the system stay in place, because you're not going to change your hitting coach and all that late in the year. Derek Jeter seems like a good opportunity. I wouldn't mind that. The Marlins are probably going to fire Don Mattingly after the season. Maybe you can bring in Don Mattingly, trade for him. You can't make trades for players or not. You can make trades for coaches. And it's not like they're going to ask for a king's ransom for Don Mattingly. So I think there's still options out there to fire Aaron Boone and replace him. I think had they lost that game against Tampa, I think they do it. I mean, I really do. I mean, now they're winning a few more games, and they won some games with around that Met series at the right time to, I think, save Aaron Boone's job around that time too.
Interesting.
All right. I would not be shocked if they have a bad couple of games against Minnesota that the Yankees just fire Aaron Boone.
Wow. You give the Yankees much more credit in that regard than I do. I see Hal Steinbrenner as someone who wants so hard to not be his dad that he gives his manager and his general manager a long leash, a longer leash than anybody could have ever imagined. I can't foresee the Yankees firing Aaron Boone. Not that he doesn't deserve it, and not that it wouldn't be interesting. And but if I were the Yankees and I was going to bring in a manager, I wouldn't bring Girardi back. I wouldn't do that. That would almost. I don't have a problem myself in saying I made a mistake, because I've made plenty of mistakes, and I think we learn and grow from our mistakes. But I don't know if the Yankees are willing to say we made a mistake by firing Girardi and we're going to bring him back to take us to the promised land. I would not give a neophyte, a brand new guy like Jeter, a chance to be the manager out of the blue in the middle of a pennant race. Love Don Mattingly.
I do it. I do. Honestly, if you told me Derek Jeter's the manager tomorrow, I'm up for it. Here's the thing. You explicitly don't give him power, right? You don't be like, hey, Derek Jeter, you get to, you're gonna be the one who teach, establishes the system for like preparing for games and hitting coach. All that's done. All you got Dylan Lawson to do that. You got Matt Blake to do that. You got Derek Jeter to not take any shit from anybody, right? And that I think is the answer right there. So like I tell you, if you told me, look, I think Joe Girardi is the obvious choice. If the Yankees want to fire Aaron Boone, I think they call up Joe Girardi and they say, "Can you take a flight to New York now?"
Wow, that would be amazing. It's never happening. Boone's lasting the season, and you know what, EJ? Unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour already. We have spent an hour talking baseball together. Lots of good stuff. Let's hope by the time we talk next Monday that the Yankees rattle off 6, 7, 8 wins in a row, whatever it is, and keep this streak going. And we don't have to be talking about firing the manager. And instead, we're talking about the Yankees and their ability to be healthy and win the 2022 World Series. Thank you, EJ. You're the best. I always love talking baseball with you. My dear friends who watched, this is the Start Spreading the News Yankees program on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. We are here every single Monday live at 9 p.m. See you next week.